Wizard of Oz. He really is the Wizard of Wiz, if ever a Wiz there was. If ever a Wiz there was, the Wizard of Oz is one because of the wonderful things he does.
G'day, welcome to my first full book review, and the one that I've chosen to start with is the first book that I actually bought when I left the Jehovah's Witnesses, and that is Unmasking the Watchtower by Dr. Selwyn Stevens. As you can see, I'm flying solo today. Dorothy's off asleep in Kansas at the moment, so I have to do this one by myself, but hopefully she'll be awake for many more, and she's got plenty to say. She's finding her vocabulary at the moment. But anyway, back to the subject. So this book, Unmasking the Watchtower, I've put the cover before the start of this video, and I'll put it into a comment on the end, the website and the ISBN number if you're interested to read it. I'm not sure that I'd actually probably go and buy this book now, but like I said, this was the first book that I bought that I had the courage to get something that wasn't printed by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. It felt very naughty. I was in a Christian, sort of slipped into a Christian bookshop quite a few suburbs away, and looked at the section on Jehovah's Witnesses, and there were a few books. This seemed the most innocuous, what should I say? As I say, it's published by Dr. Selwyn Stevens, who's a New Zealand-based educational and religious instructor, a speaker and an ordained minister. Good for him. Right, but it was one of the first things I read that really started confirming hey, you've been in a cult, even though I didn't want to believe it. So in his introduction, he put that the priority of this book, Unmasking Deception, in regards to Jehovah's Witnesses, was a threefold. First, he said it's intended to inform and equip Christians about groups which claim to be Christian but which can be clearly shown are not. Such groups are often called cults. I remember reading that thinking, yeah, cult, bad word. But it's defined here as a group of people who are gathered around someone's misinterpretation of the Bible. So, well, there you go. Jehovah's Witnesses. Secondly, I hope to provide compelling information which would cause a person considering joining the Watchtower to see that they are in danger of deception. True. Thirdly is to help those entangled in cults and other spiritual deceptions. And the conclusion of his introduction is the point needs to be made that deceived people don't usually know that they are. That is the nature of deception. And isn't that the truth? Nearly all Jehovah's Witnesses are trapped, but they don't even are aware that they're trapped. So definitely they fall into the definition of a cult and have been brainwashed. I remember having this conversation with one of my cousins who left the Jehovah's Witnesses, and she said, "Oh, you're brainwashed." And I actually got a bit cranky. Sorry, Julie. I was like, "No, I'm not." And she said, "You are. You have been brainwashed." Now, I know it's not brainwashed in the sense of, I've sat down and I'm strapped to a chair and being forced to have things flashed into my eyes and, Chinese water torture, all that sort of thing, to indoctrinate me. It never happened. But I was brainwashed in the sense that I was only ever given one piece of information. I was ever only shown one side of the story. Looking, say, example of grow up in a garden, and if you're told that everything you see is green, you'd believe it until you look outside over the wall and there's a rainbow. That's different colours, things that you've never even seen. So in that sense, yes, I was brainwashed, and I subsequently come to admit that and got over it. But anyway, thank you, Julie, for pointing that out to me. Right, now in the book it goes through a bit of the history of the Jehovah's Witness organisation, which, you know, if you're in it now, you already know that. There's nothing too supremely surprising, but you do well to do a bit of research on that. Have a look at jwfacts.com just to see some surprises. I was surprised to learn that William Conley was the first president of the Watchtower Society, not Charles Taze Russell. He was only a junior shareholder to his father and to William Conley, but that's not widely known, but it is documented and can be shown. Now, the interesting thing here is that when Russell, back in 1912, he brought a court case against a Ontario Baptist preacher who put out a pamphlet denouncing Russell for his false teachings. Well, Russell took him to court, and Russell had falsely claimed that he was an ordained minister who knew Greek. Now, under oath, Russell failed to identify Greek letters put to him, and also to admit to perjury and not knowing Hebrew or Latin either. So this is the founder of the Watchtower Society. He was not a scholar. He just had eaten too much of his miracle wheat. Further on, it brings out about Rutherford, the Crim, and an interesting point came out, which I've read before, about a court case that was in Scotland. And this one really opened my eyes, because I'd always heard, taught, whispered, that Fred Franz was the Watchtower's guru. He was the Rhodes Scholar. He knew Greek. He translated the Bible, all this wonderful stuff. Well, he got taken. He was in a court case in Scotland in November 23rd, 1954, and I've actually got it off the public register. You can get the transcripts for the court, and under oath, Franz testified that he and Nathan Knorr had the final word when it came to translation. It wasn't this unnamed body of men. That he, Franz, was the head of the Society's publicity department, and that the translation and interpretation came from God invisibly communicated to the publicity department by angels of various ranks who controlled the translators. Now that is, well, as the author puts here, that is a rather startling admission. What Franz is describing is not divine inspiration, but spiritism, which is something that the Watchtower had condemned. And in fact, what they're referring to was the source of the New World Translation is a copy from a spirit-guided translation by Johannes Gruber, an excommunicated German Catholic priest, in 1937. And I've had a copy of that, and might come to have a bit of a look at that in a further video. But there's many. If you look it up, you'll find a lot of information. Now, they actually admitted to that in the Watchtower of 1983 from a question from a reader. They admitted that that's where their translation had come from, because in that court case in Scotland, Franz, the prosecutor, put a bit of elementary school Greek to Franz, and he couldn't read it, couldn't translate it, so he had no idea. But there's that aura about him that he was the scholar. So that was the first thing I saw, and I was, well, surprised, and looked that up on the internet and found what the author had written here was right. The rest of the book is mainly doctrinal stuff, and I did go through it and started me thinking, looking, that a lot of the things weren't right. But an interesting part of the book, he comes under mind control, and here he quotes from Stephen Hassan, and he described that the bite model. probably if you're an active Jehovah's Witness, or you're looking outside, you've probably never heard of it. I hadn't. But then hadn't done any higher studies or critical thinking, anything like that. But for those of you who don't know what it is, BITE is describing the 4 attributes of mind control in a cult. There's thought control. Oh, sorry, start with behavioral control. Let's do it alphabetically. Information control, thought control, and emotional control. Starting with behavioral control is occurs when socializing and entertainment are frowned on and replaced by meetings and official activities such as door-to-door work. Cult members are made to feel both special yet persecuted for their beliefs. That fits Jehovah's Witnesses. Information control. This means that anything remotely critical of the organization, like this, is kept from the members. And it says most cults are hierarchical or pyramidic in structure, so the higher you go, the more information you are permitted to access. Not quite so much in the Jehovah's Witnesses. It's just that tier. When you get to the elders, that's where all the secret manual comes out, and the letters to the body of elders that contain a lot of damning information. So information control, that's everything the person reads comes from that organization. Thought control, and this involves a special language which is unique to that cult group. And isn't it true, like in Jehovah's Witnesses, it's its own language. You know, you'd be out working somewhere that you didn't know people, and you could tell if someone was a witness just by the occasion that they're talking to each other. A word would pop out and you hear it straight away. It's like, they must be a Jehovah's Witness. So that makes that sort of a secret language that's in amongst the group, helps them to feel that they're custodians of the truth and everything else is evil. So that's another thought control. And emotional control includes the use of phobias or bringing various fears and guilts onto a person. Daring to question the organization or leaving it will result in some horrible disaster happening to you, such as death in Armageddon. Such manipulation is usually subtle, well, not really in the Jehovah's Witnesses, but still very real. So he described that's the first time I'd seen that, and it's just like, well. And Stephen Hassan's, sorry, I've forgotten the name of his book, describes there's a 55 tick boxes to define a cult, and he's not specifically saying Jehovah's Witnesses in it, but apparently if you read through it, you can tick 52 out of 55. So definitely in a cult. But anyway, so it's an interesting little book, and just to get to the conclusion of it, he says in summary, Jehovah's Witnesses are a religious group who are out of step with the Bible. They also meet the definition of a cult. The Watchtower Society seems to be a commercial organization geared to make money from magazine and book sales. The people the Watchtower send to knock on our doors have undergone a form of mind control and need to know they've been deceived. So it's quite a good little book. All this information that's in here is freely available on jwfacts.com and onto Free Minds as well. So I'll put those links in the comments and hopefully help you look up some things. So if you're looking at outside the square as a Jehovah's Witness, there are lots of publications, lots of good websites that can help you, and that was just one, and I selected this one to start with as it was the first book. So it was good to talk to you all again, and hopefully I'll have Dorothy with me for the next one, and I'll catch you around. Thanks for that. Bye.
I regret to announce this is the end. I'm going now. I bid you all a very fond farewell.